Hello friends, welcome back to the channel. I hope this chilly time of year is treating you well so far. You know, speaking of how chilly it is lately, I've been thinking I need a hat to keep my head warm. Now this is my normal hat and it's awesome for keeping rain and sun off my face. But it's not really designed to keep your ears warm. So I've looked into it, and I think today I'm gonna make a sort of beanie stocking cap. I've never actually successfully made one of these before, so I guess let's see what we can do. Let's get to it. So there are thousands of how to make a hat tutorials on YouTube, and I'll put a couple of my favorites down in the description below. The Crafty Gemini is one of my favorite channels and is amazing at sewing tutorials, and you should definitely check out her channel. This video is going to be a little bit different just because I don't actually have a sewing machine, so this is all going to be done with good old-fashioned needle and thread. But before we can get into the nitty-gritty, we have to figure out what we're using today. Let's go! I was at the thrift store the other day looking for material when I found this awesome jacket, and it had this perfect holiday fabric on it. And I always love giving new life to things like this, which, you know, otherwise might have found their way to a dumpster somewhere. So I'm also going to need to use this delicious fake fur fabric to line the hat for extra warmth. We're also going to need something to make a pattern out of, and a cereal box in this case is just the thing. And of course we need our trusty ruler. Gonna need a marker for drawing out our pattern on the fabric, and a pencil to make the template. And of course our scissors. Hiya! And where would we be without our lovely thread? And as always, I'm gonna be using this extra strength thread to avoid the headache of thread breakage. And the piece de résistance, these pins and needles. Oh, and the fur is going to shed a bunch, so we should probably have something to keep all that fuzz for later. Okay, so one of the most important things in a project like this is having a template you can use to trace out the shapes you want onto your fabric. The Crafty Gemini has a link to a free pattern on the video in the description, and that's more or less what we're going to be using today. But I don't actually have a printer, so we're going to have to figure this out with only our trusty ruler. Huzzah! So I downloaded the pattern, and then I measured the size of all the pieces. And once I had my measurements, I took to the cardboard. The dome of the hat should be 5 3/4 inches long. So put a dot in the middle of that to find its center, and then go up 6 1/4 inches and put another dot. So now I'm just gonna basically freestyle a sort of archway. This is just a template for another template, so I'm not really worried too much about how it looks right now. But after getting that down, I cut it out, I fold it in half, and cut up the crease. And then I trace one of the pieces onto a different cereal box to have a more symmetrical shape. And then let's cut that out. And then for the other part of the pattern, we're cutting a strip of cardboard that is 11 1/4 inches long by 3 inches on one side and 2 1/2 inches on the other. The shorter side is going to be the back of the hat later on. And now cut that out, and I just wrote which way the fabric needs to stretch when you draw out the pattern, just to sort of help us remember. To get the stretch direction correct, because if you don't have a fabric that stretches, or if it stretches the wrong way, probably not going to fit your head, or at least not as well. So to make a hat like the one we're trying to, we have to make sure the stretch goes side to side always. If it goes up and down, it's not going to help fit our heads up in there. Okie dokie, so let's get these shapes drawn on our fabric. Now this jacket is a nice fleece, and fortunately it stretches side to side and not up and down, so we can get the pattern as part of the hat on there. So we're going to line up the template on the fabric where we want it and draw it on there. I'm going to try to get me a reindeer on there. I went back and forth between using chalk and a marker to draw the pattern on there, but in the end I used the marker on the lighter parts and the chalk on the darker parts on the bottom. And I'm going to draw 4 of these arch pieces on there. now that I'm done drawing, I'm going to pause for a moment and take my 3 deep centering breaths to bring me back to being present, and also to thank this jacket for coming into my life and letting me continue its life by making something I could use. It's always good to practice gratitude for that which you use, especially if you're transforming it. And when I feel ready, I go on to cut out the shapes. I apologize that the lines are hard to see, but once I'm done cutting the arches, I will draw on 2 of the longer pieces. Now you could also draw this pattern out once and have the larger side be on a fold, thus cutting out only 1 piece, but I don't have enough fabric for that. Alrighty, there are the 6 pieces which are going to be the outer layer of our hat. Woo! Now let's repeat everything we just did on our fur fabric. Alright, now when those are cut out, I'm going to go ahead and gently remove the excess fluff from around each of the edges so that my hat isn't randomly shedding on me later. I can't pull too dramatically though, because I could take off too much fluff and damage the fabric. When we've defluffed all 6 pieces, there's going to be a lot of fluff everywhere. Thank goodness I brought this handy dandy baggie. Gonna save that for another project. I never like to throw things away, much to the chagrin of anyone who's ever lived with me. And there are all our pieces laid out. Doesn't that look so nice? Okay, so let's get the fur out of here for a minute. Now the next step is to take 2 of the arches and put them together, outsides facing. Fleece is really nice because if you can't tell which side is the outside, just stretch it. It will almost always roll toward the wrong side of the fabric, so this way you can tell this is the back, this is the front, and that's usually what's not going to be on the outside. Now go ahead and plop the 2 strips you cut out on top of each other, outsides facing, but make sure you get the smaller sides together. Now I'm going to pin the 2 small edges of the strips and also the right hand sides of the arches. Next I'm going to sew up wherever I pinned. And now that we have our 3 pieces of our hat shell, or outer layer, let's open up the 2 arches and place the nice sides of the 2 pieces together, just like we did with the last step. And again, just pin up that whole archway and then let's put that all aside. We're going to move on to the fur really quickly. We're copying the exact same steps as with the fleece fabric. So right sides together and pin. We have to get all that extra fluff out of the way first though, so I'm going to tuck it down here as I go before putting pins in. And this fabric is pretty wobbly, so I'm probably going to use a couple extra pins. Okay, so there we have it, all of our pin fabric. We now have 6 pieces total, down from our original 12. So let's bring in our pins and our needle. And just like before, wherever we put pins, we're gonna put stitching. So let's get sewing, starting with the fur, and boom, simple as that. We now have something that resembles a hat, woohoo! So let's do that again with the fleece, and shazam! We have brought the 4 arches we started with into one hat-like shape. So now we have to attach the band or the brim. So turn the hat right side out. Spin it in your hands to admire your work. And then take the long strip we sewed together, keeping it wrong side out. And fit the hat inside the brim and line up the bottom of the hat with the bottom of the brim, making sure that the seams also line up. And go ahead and pin along the bottom edge of the brim and do the same dealio with the fur pieces, but use the fur tucking technique from before. Now we should have it all pinned. now they are sewn together. Double huzzah! And honestly, at this point, I could stop if I didn't want to line the hat with another fabric. This looks pretty darn cozy already. But I want a bit more warmth because I run on the cool side. So I'm going to use the same magic on the fur pieces, and blam, that's together. Be sure to remove all the pins from inside the hat before you wear it because they will poke you in the head. So at this point we basically have two hats, and all we have to do is to put them together. So line up the shorter sides of the brim so that the hat doesn't lay funny. Then, just as I did before, I make the right sides face each other. Or at least I tried. For some reason, my brain couldn't handle how to do that for a few tries there. But once the correct sides are facing, I'm going to tuck the fur in and pin it all around the edge. And this whole project is pretty much repeating the same things over and over again, starting with the 12 pieces and sewing them together until eventually there's just the one. So line up the seams, get them pinned, and then pin the spaces between them. And then, just as before, we sew where we pin. I started the seam at the back of the hat and then sewed all the way around until I had about 2 inches left. I tied off the thread there, and then came the fun part. Get that pin out of there, and then shove all of the fabric out through the opening. Now I have something that looks more or less like a pillow, and actually if you wanted to make a pillow, you could probably stop at this point and just stuff it full of fluff and have a pillow. But I'm not doing that. I'm tucking the fur inside the fleece, and voila, there is one fine looking warm hat. And so all that's left to do is to sew up the remaining hole, and that'll be that. And there we have it. We have made a hat to keep us warm in this chilly weather. Now you'll notice I did have to go back after the fact and add a little more fabric because it looked a little silly. And all I did was cut 4 rectangles of the blue fabric, 3 inches wide by 12 inches long. Sewed them into one long strip that was 2 layers thick, and then just sewed them onto the outside of the hat. And I was lucky because I think the fleece covered up all the stitching in there. You can't even see it. I do think if you make a hat like this off of this template, the measurements for the band around the edge should be a little bit wider. Like I did 3 inches originally, then I had to add another 3 inches later on. So if you wanted to kind of split the difference between the two, you could add like another inch to the bottom of the arch piece, and maybe another 1.5 inches, 2 inches to the width of the brim piece. Unless you have a really small head, in which case you should be good. Whew, this is too warm inside. So thanks for making the trek back to the channel this week, friends. If you liked the video, go ahead and tap that like button. And if you like what I'm doing here just generally, find that subscribe button somewhere on your screen and give it some love. And if you're feeling extra generous, or if you just know someone who has a really cold head, maybe share the video with them. They might appreciate it. I'm always so grateful for each and every one of you who watch these videos. And if you do feel like making a hat like this one, go ahead and let me know how it went in the comments. And don't forget to check out the Crafty Gemini. I got a lot of inspiration for this project from her channel, as well as the downloadable pattern. So keep warm out there, friends. And don't forget to always keep bringing your attention back to your breath so that you're always in the moment and never too far away from yourself. Be well, and I will see you all very soon. Ta-ta for now.